and open a public hearing on House Joint Memorial 15. Ask Representative Smith to come on forward. You're very punctual, sir. Let me give a quick preface for this joint memorial. This is not a new idea. The idea of someday being able to view Celilo Falls as it naturally flowed in the past. It was an idea talked about in the mid-'80s, and then again in the mid-2000s for the bicentennial of the Lewis and Clark tour of discovery. And I'm very happy that folks are here to talk about it today, to give us their perspectives. And I just want to note that as written, it's a preliminary baby step to ask the Corps of Engineers if it is indeed possible to operate the Dalles Dam to accomplish that, and no more. Just the beginning place for such a conversation into the future. And Representative Smith was kind enough to share his opinion immediately upon hearing, and I appreciate that, and I welcome you here today.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Oregon State Representative Greg Smith, and I have the distinct pleasure of representing District 57, which includes the great community of Milton Freewater and Hermiston and Stanfield and Umatilla, Port of Umatilla, Port of Morrow in Morrow County, Port of Arlington in Gillum County, Sherman County, and also the Dalles Dam as we head into Dufur and Wasco County. I've had an opportunity to read House Joint Memorial 15, and I can appreciate the sentiment of why we're introducing this. There's some thoughts that I want to share for the record on this. I've been involved in conversations on the Columbia Snake River system for over 25 years now. And it's important to understand that the Columbia Snake River system is just that. It's a system. It's made up of locks all the way from Idaho down to Bonneville Dam on the Columbia River. And it's very important that these locks and these dams work together in partnership. And should you interrupt the service on one of those dams, it could have dramatic effects on the rest of the system. Let me share with you how that might play out. First and foremost is the reason these dams were originally put into place, and that was for flood control. Multnomah County is very dependent upon those locks and those dams operating at full functionality. And so it would concern me if we in any way undermine that specific purpose. And I would keep in mind that the Port of Portland, in its location and proximity to the Columbia River, could potentially be most devastated by a lowering of Lake Celilo. The second thing I'd like to share with the committee is understand that there are waterfowl and wildlife that depend upon Lake Celilo, particularly migratory waterfowl, ducks and geese. And many of those geese are protected and endangered species. And so once again, we've got to be very, very careful with our good intentions to not in any way undermine those sensitive species. So we've got flood control as a potential issue. We've got to make sure that we're protecting our wildlife. The second thing I want to remind the committee is that navigation is an important factor of the Columbia Snake River system. And we have barges that come all the way from Lewiston and Clarkston that are carrying our farmers' products, wheat, commodities such as corn, beans, all of those type of products up and down the Columbia Snake River system. And we want to be careful that we're not, once again, interrupting the locks that our industries are dependent upon. I want to remind you that a secondary reason, and this was a secondary reason those dams were put in place, was to ensure that we had affordable and reliable power. And the Dalles Dam is part of that, of the Pacific Northwest power grid in creating that affordable power. Now, why is that important? Why is that important? Well, during the interim, I had an opportunity to talk with a Fortune 500 high-tech company who was looking at coming into my industry, and it was really fascinating to visit with them when they talked about that hydro, in their mind, in their corporate culture, is renewable. And I would hate for us in any way to undermine that renewable, low-cost, affordable power that all of us in the Pacific Northwest enjoy. I also want to talk with you about the concern of losing irrigation opportunities. By lowering the pool at Lake Celilo, we would be impacting upriver irrigation opportunities. Folks who are using that water, and by the way, I want to share this with you just very quickly. The amount of water that comes out of the Columbia is minute compared to what is lost to evaporation. But nonetheless, those pumps are placed in a stationary location, and should the pool be lowered, they would have to accommodate that lowering. So I want to share with you that would be a potential issue. And the last thing I want to visit with you about is the recreational opportunities. We've got many folks who use Celilo Lake for recreational activities that benefit the economy of Wasco County and Sherman County and Gillum County and even Morrow County. And so I would hope that you would take into consideration that should House Joint Memorial pass, we're sending a message to those local counties that their tourism activities perhaps are not as important. And I don't think that's what we want to do. Finally, committee, I want to share what perhaps is more of an emotional argument than an intellectual argument. I've been involved in this discussion, as I shared with you, for many years, several decades. Sometimes it's better not to pick fights. And right now, we've got our 4 treaty tribes and the Yakima, the Warm Springs, and the Nez Perce and the Umatilla working together with industry on the Columbia River. We may not always agree, and there might be projects that we're not able to get taken care of, but for the most part, we're all working together. By lowering the Celilo Lake, we're going to start an argument that just doesn't need to be started. Finally, colleagues, I want to share this with you, and this is awkward to share, but it's a reality. Celilo Falls does not look like it once did. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending upon your perspective, when the John Day Dam was created, significant modification to those falls occurred. And so should we lower the Dalles Dam, and should we see what's behind that dam, it's not going to look the way it once did. And that's just a reality. So, colleagues, I understand House Joint Memorial 15 was introduced for some good reasons. Folks wanted to be able to bring back a portion of their history. They wanted to look at perhaps some alternative employment and economic development opportunities. But the reality is those opportunities just don't exist. And so, colleagues, I would ask that you not support House Joint Memorial 15. Mr. Vice Chair, I really, really appreciate you giving me this opportunity to introduce this, and I definitely introduce you and I visiting on this issue. That's what working in a bipartisan manner is all about. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to share these thoughts with you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Representative.
Have a great day.
Okay. At this time, I'll invite Sean Cruz and Cynthia Vogel. And how about Tabitha Whitefoot? Come on up. And again, folks, we have very little time. About 2 minutes, if you can.
Really? Thank you.
I've got 2 other bills to get through. I'm sorry.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Sean Aaron Cruz. I'm representing the Friends of Celilo Falls. And I really wanted to defer to, there are people here from Celilo Village that have come a long ways today. And they've waited a long time to have their opportunity to speak. And actually the last time that any person had an opportunity to speak about Celilo was in the 2007 legislative session. So if it was all due respect and your permission, could we do that?
Would that be, is it Lana or Laura? Jack? Come on up, yeah. And anybody else
Linda
that's
Yanis.
from Celilo Village, come on up, yeah. I try to get folks that are from a ways away to get up here first, so happy to have you. Go right ahead.
My name is Lana Jack. That's my English name. I come from a long line of maternal ancestors from Celilo who have fought and lost this battle. The redevelopment of Celilo at this point is our 6th relocation plan, completely disenfranchising the YM people. Today, as the granddaughter of Minnie Wesley Shawway, the great-granddaughter of Minnie Wesley Shawway, and the granddaughter of Irene Williams Bruno, in 1957, these women stood against the United States government to tell their stories and make their pleas for their people. In 1957, it was disregarded because it was more important to have electricity to send to California. It was more important to have barges running to Clarkston and Lewiston. It was more important to serve the greater need of a community, meanwhile oppressing, committing genocide upon a people. Celilo Falls, uncovering it. Do you ask, am I in favor? I don't know. All I know is that our people have suffered long, too long behind all of this. And it's time for reconciliation. It's time for recompense. It's time for restoration. It's time for a people who've been there 10,000 years to be recognized. So if there was an appeal that I was to make to any one of you, it'd be on behalf of a people who have been terminated and exterminated and thrown to the winds.
Thank you for your testimony. Go right ahead.
Hello. I already have submitted a written testimony, but I guess there's
Can we
only
get your name on the
Tabitha
record?
Whitefoot.
Thank you.
I hear what Lana is saying, and I actually support her very much because this is a very troubled issue. If I've traveled up past Lewiston and up onto the Nez Perce Reservation, and up there the hills are blue with our roots and everything because they're still growing. And they're growing there because of the mist. All of the, I know that other animals have filled in Celilo Lake, but the reality is for 10 to 14 days, it's not going to bring back our ecosystem. It's not going to bring back something that's going to be recognizable to those of us who were there, because I did go through inundation. I was in Celilo Village the day of inundation, and there are less and less of us that can say that. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that I don't know why we'd want to expose the bones, maybe even the destroyed bones of our falls. I don't see the use of it. I don't see how is this going to benefit anybody? I'm sorry they want to see the falls. I didn't get to see them because I was legally blind when I was a child. But I know how they sounded. I know how it smelled. I know how it felt. And you're not going to get that back. I mean, look at what happened with Condit Dam. It was completely, when they let it down, it was full of mud. It was, everything had to wash out. We're not going to see my hometown, Spearfish, we're not going to see it in its beauty or have our roots or have anything back the way it was. It's just going to be mud. And I don't know why people would want to do this. I have no idea.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
Good afternoon. I'm Linda George Mianis. I'm the great-granddaughter of Chief Tommy Thompson. And I was 6 years old when I seen the inundation of excuse me, of Celilo. This is kind of a sad day for the village, that they feel like, why you want to do this? It's just like doing another inundation of our ancestors, of our family, of a way of life that's already been destroyed. And we want to keep it going with our future generations, because my grandkids, they love the fishing, they love the salmon, they love the roots and the berries, and they love the way of life that they have right now before it's destroyed again. And every year we have millions of people, not millions, but thousands of people that come to the village, because we always have. Last weekend we had our salmon feast, and it was in honor of our first foods that is always provided to us. And we feel like, don't destroy something that we have to live through again. I mean, just think if it was your family living there, what would you do? How would you feel if it was you in our place? I think you would feel the same way. Taking something away from them again is just going to be a heartbreak to my future generation, to my grandkids. And I feel like, we don't need to have another inundation for our future generation. We've already been suffered through this once. We don't need to do it again. And it was for the name of progress. Think of another way. It's not about money, it's about a way of life. It's about traditions and culture. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming today and sharing your perspectives. Appreciate it. At this time, thank you. At this time, I think we may have two more people. Cynthia Vogel and Treath. Yeah. Again, I'm sorry that we're running so late. I could encourage you again to be brief. I would appreciate it.
Certainly. Chair Helm and members of the committee, for the record, Sean Aaron Cruz, and I want to give a little bit different perspective. I was Senator Avil Gordley's chief of staff in the 2007 session of the 50-year anniversary of the flooding of Celilo Falls, and delegations of the Umatilla and Warm Springs tribes and the people of Celilo Village, including two of the speakers today, came to the Capitol, asked Senator Gordley to sponsor the two Celilo bills. And I just want to quote one line from the resolution that, where is it? That, no, that's not it. It's in the other page. That's part of the resolution that was read in the Senate floor by Senator Gordley. It says, whereas on March 10th, 1957, the waters held back by the Dalles Dam flooded and silenced the awesome and sacred roar of Celilo Falls, severing a great spiritual connection between the Creator, Mother Earth, and the native peoples of Oregon. And you've seen evidence, you've heard evidence that that is the case, and that is the case that will live forever in a lot of people's hearts. And I also heard when the bills came to the Senate floor, the discussion among the senators was that to flood Celilo Falls today would be unthinkable. That if the falls were flooded, if the tribal fishery existed today, who would propose flooding it, and particularly for barging? Now, it turns out that the Army Corp of Engineers did a sonar study some years ago and determined that not only the rock structure of the falls are intact, but it's not silted up. There's still a pulse there. It's not silted up, and we have that report from the Corps of Engineers. And so the thing is, when the tribes came to the Capitol in 2007 and discussed this, they told us that the falls were not flooded for hydropower, but for two other reasons. Barging, navigation, and to force the Indians to abandon the village, which was consistent with federal policy in the 50s, the termination and relocation era.
Sean, if I could ask you to wrap up.
So the thing is, the end result, what I hope we get, is that the legislative body will appoint an interim task force to study the issue of the Columbia River Treaty Review and the proposal to add ecosystem-based function as a third fundamental purpose of the treaty, and bring that study to the 2016 Legislative Assembly. That's what we were hoping you'll do. Thank you.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
Good day. I'm Trios Joseph Bullock. I'm a board member of the Friends of Celilo Falls, and I'm also a board member of the Celilo Falls Education Fund. I'm speaking for the Education Fund today. We've brought some photographs, historic photographs of the falls. And our organization is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to advocating for the natural rights of the Columbia River itself. And key points in our vision are the revitalization of her waters, which have borne toxic loads for quite a while, recovery of the native fisheries, and full restoration of indigenous harvest sites on the mid-Columbia. It's our perspective that the flooding of Celilo Falls in 1957 is not a historic event, but that it's an ongoing genocidal violence. We believe that the river itself deserves to be a living river rather than an impounded industrial highway. And we see some of the factors that are coming toward us in climate change, which are going to require the river to actually have higher flow rates in order to counter the warming of the river. And that's going to impede the efficiency of barge traffic. 3 years ago, barge traffic was shut down for 6 months. Alternative methods were used for transport at very small differences in cost. The barges are subsidized by public monies, and we don't think that's a sustainable system. One of the other things you may not know is that dams are not, in fact, green. The decomposition of matter behind the dams is contributing methane gas, a greenhouse warming gas, at the same level as the world's transportation systems right now. So if we're going to make meaningful action in response to anthropogenic factors in climate change, dam removal eventually is going to need to be part of that picture. So we're recommending that you go forward with a task force to actually explore the options, explore these questions, to make a recommendation in the 2014-2024 process, to really look at the ecological services of the river as well as the cultural services of the river that are connected to its indigenous histories and presence. So thank you.
Thank you. Cynthia, you're up here as audio vision. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thanks everybody for coming today. I have to move on to the next hearing. I'm sorry.
Can I just say I agree with the task force?
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. And I've written that down. So we'll see what we can do. Again, thanks for coming and sharing your perspectives on this.